is normally, I do 3 different versions of this talk. I do a 2-hour version, a 3-hour version, and a 6-hour version. So I am going to try to pack 6 hours worth of material into the next 60 minutes. And I promise you I will answer any questions that you have later via email. My email address is Doreen, so it's D-O-R-E-E-N, at the same name again, DoreenDM.com. And I'm pretty sure that that's on the bottom of your flyer or handouts that are in your materials. So I would encourage you right now to not even think about writing, to not even think about taking notes, but instead to try to kind of let whatever is supposed to land and stick with you, land and stick with you. Because I think I'm just trusting that in this moment, the right things from that 6 hours worth of talking is going to come. And you're going to hold on to the right thing that you need for your situation. This is something we could talk about for 6 weeks. I mean, technology is taking over. I'm just going to immerse you really quickly in technology today in the lives of kids. I'm going to show you the most viewed YouTube video in the last 12 months.
Up in the morning, gotta be fresh, gotta go downstairs, gotta have my bowl, gotta have cereal, seeing everything, the time is going, ticking on and on, everybody's rushing, gotta get down to the bus stop, gotta catch my bus, I see my friends.
The most played and purchased video game in the last 12 months. This made $8 billion in the first 3 days of sales.
English fans.
Average gamer in the U.S. is now age 34 to 38, male. The second most common group playing this game are 14 to 18-year-old boys.
Just the will of a single man.
This is the most downloaded app in the last 12 months. That means across platforms, phones, pads, and computers. From Facebook show that this is the number of Facebook users, the number of Twitter users. Facebook has, it's experiencing a little bit of a shift right now, but it is considered the most visited website. Anybody heard of Pinterest? If you know of a college-age young woman, likely they are wasting their life away on this website. This is now quickly approaching the same number of hits a day as Facebook, and it is basically just online pin boards where you put pictures of things you love. Pinterest. Even real-life experiences, things that in the past have been focused on being in a place and having an experience with a shared group of people, are now becoming digitally driven. When you go to a sporting event, what do? You watch it on the big screen. Everything, I don't know about you guys, but in my local grocery store, they now have TV screens at the checkout lines. They have those at yours? As though I'm so stupid that I can't entertain myself while I'm unloading my groceries, onto the cart. Everything is becoming digitally driven. Toys now. This is the new Barbie that came out last Christmas. It has a digital video camera in her stomach. So you can use your Barbie as a camera. The newest laser tag games for boys put out by Hasbro are now used with parents' iPhones. So you use the iPhone as the laser tag device. Even Monopoly last year when I went to buy it, looks like this now. No cash. It's cashless Monopoly. It has a credit card that keeps track of your money. Now, if you want to, you can pay an extra $15 and buy vintage Monopoly that has actual money. But the mainstream version is now digital. Part of my concern is that this is happening at younger and younger ages. We now, if you go down the toy aisle at a major box store looking for toddler or baby infant toys, most of them contain a chip of some sort that allow that teething toy to light up, vibrate, sing a song. So even our toys for our youngest children now are digitally driven, and thank goodness, doll houses have even come along. I went down to Southern California playing with my niece, and she was so excited to show me her new dollhouse. I want to share with you the dad in the new dollhouse of Fisher-Price. He has a cell phone permanently attached to his hand. This really concerns me. The other thing that concerns me is this. We are now giving technology that is geared for adults to children. This is a teething toy just put out by Fisher-Price where the parent puts their iPhone in the center of the teething toy so that there can be constant stimulation. You can watch videos. If you give, there's new research out by Pew Charitable Trust, and if you give a child 18 months or younger any rectangular object, one of the first things they will do with it is swipe across it, because they are so used to seeing all the adults in their lives with rectangular objects swiping. Things are changing, and that isn't all bad. But what I find is that so many families and so many parents of children are not aware of the ways in which things are changing and of the impact that those changes have. And the impact is profound. So my hope in being with you today is to share with you kind of some of the trends in technology that create the impact, the ways that that is impacting. The impacts, I find three major areas of impact. One is neurological function. The brain scan of individuals 18 years and younger look different than the brain scans of kids 18 years and younger 18 years ago. And they look dramatically different. So brains are changing as a result of our interaction with screen. The next kind of impact is relationally. Huge relational impact. The way relationships are built and maintained that's definitely impacted by technology. And then the thing that I don't find in the research, but I am very passionate about, I personally feel like technology is changing the way in which children develop a sense of self. And I think that is where you guys can have a profound effect, because yoga distinctly helps children tap in with a sense of self. We're going to skip a couple slides here. We grow optimally within a connected community, but now this is a slide that is from some of my very first talks 8 years ago. 8 years ago, they found that kids were interacting with technology more than parents. If that was true 8 years ago, we know for sure now it is true. And I believe it has resulted in us being the most entertained culture by far. But the thing that concerns me is that we are also the most bored. About 6 years ago, when Pew put out their first study, they found that the average American was spending 8.5 hours a day in front of a screen. And this was non-work time. This was leisure time. The tricky thing is that we have learned in those intervening 6 years that hardly ever are we using one screen at a time. More often we are multitasking, you know what I mean? So you're listening to your iPod and watching something, or you're on your phone and typing. And so if you control for multi-use, it actually begins to look like we are spending 11 hours in front of screens. And that is a huge concern. Is that a concern to you? It's a huge concern to me. When I'm talking about screen time, and we're going to fly through again, these are the things I'm talking about. And this is the one that people are really not thinking about, that I would love, if you take nothing else from here today, go out and spread the word to parents, to pregnant parents, about you are setting the norm. And if you give your child an iPhone at 6 months in their teething toy, how do you then justify not giving them a cell phone in 5th grade when everyone else is getting one? So setting the norms and being aware that these toys with chips have a huge impact on how this next generation is going to interact with technology. Making matters far worse are several things. First of all, when I was in graduate school 8,000 years ago, I had this first Macintosh computer. It was considered very portable. You could take it with you anywhere. And now, a couple weeks ago, I was speaking out of town and was getting off the plane, and there was a person in first class with their video iPod, which is just a tiny bit smaller than this, watching porn on their iPod sitting in the plane. Technology now goes anywhere. It is small. So the shrinking size of technology means that we are encouraging kids and empowering kids to consume media and technology outside of the range of the impact of the adults in their lives who will help them be discerning. Now, when I was growing up, if I wanted to watch the forbidden television show in my house, which at that point was Love Boat, my dad called it Smut Barge, I had to watch it on our one huge console TV in the middle of the house. And if I was going to get caught, there were terrible consequences. Can anybody guess what the consequences were? I was going to have to talk to my dad about why this television show was not edifying for me, which meant I was going to have to spend time sitting looking in my dad's eyes talking about sex, which was highly, highly preventative of me wanting to take that risk. Now, kids can watch whatever they want, wherever they want, whenever they want, easily. And most of the time, their parents are not aware. 90% of children who have smartphones, parents are not aware that their children's phones are internet-enabled. They are also not aware that they can do things like put parental controls on a cell phone. Most parents I talk with have no idea that their son's Xbox, if it is plugged in for playing online video games, can also very easily access porn. So they may have the toughest and most strict, computer safeguards up, but Xbox, no problem. And they just have no idea. So the shrinking size of technology is a huge issue. The rating system is another huge issue. One of my favorite things is to go in video game stores and you'll see parents asking the salesperson at the video game store, which I'm just thinking that people don't go work at video game stores because they have a passion for the healthy development of children. But parents will go in and say, is this game okay for my child? And then we'll trust the answer. We do not pay attention. So many parents do not know what kinds of games they're playing. And if you add to that earbuds, earbuds make it so that parents parents hear silence and they go, oh, Johnny must be studying. And they have no idea what is going directly into the ears. Then the other thing is just the presence of cameras everywhere. In the past, if I really messed up, okay, kids are folly machines. That's what they are, and they are curious. And our job is to feed their curiosity. And when we aren't feeding it or aren't giving them enough to be stimulated with in real life, they will find ways of being stimulated, I promise you. And they will make mistakes because that's how we learn. Making mistakes is an awesome thing. When I made mistakes growing up, if somebody would have happened to catch me in that moment with a camera, they would have had to take the other 11 pictures, take the camera film out of the camera, take it to Long's, get it developed, bring it home, find some place that made mimeograph copies in those days. Make a bunch of copies, address a bunch of envelopes, put the pictures in the envelopes, get stamps, mail them out. Now that all happens like that because cameras are everywhere. So 80% of boys in 4th grade now report that they have seen pornographic images on cell phones in locker rooms. This is where things are. Part of the trick is that also a lot of those images are captured without people knowing just because cameras are everywhere and images are disseminated with no sense of thought. Kids are impulsive. That's who they are. Earphones, we talked about that. And then finally, power and money. Power and money in our culture drives our culture. And we tend to forget that the people who make these technologies and the things we use on these technologies do not create them for altruistic reasons, mostly. They create them because it's their job to create them, and they need money to live, and so, you want to create the biggest game. And we're going to talk more about that. But when we become honest about the fact that power and control happens so much with money, and look at the money that is in the fields of technology and technological development, it is profound, the impact that these guys have. And the way in which, so this is just an example. Okay, so I told you about Call of Duty. The highest grossing entertainment, they call it entertainment product ever released was Call of Duty. However, about 8 months after it was released, their numbers started sagging. So they decided, what can we do to bring in more money? So they created this, which is a monthly subscription that you can buy that gives you access to extra features. And I want you to pay attention to how you feel and how it would feel to pay money every month for this to be coming into your home.
Here are the things that I know to be true. Experience is the path to wisdom. Camping is for noobs and hippies. Clowns are never to be trusted. Call of Duty is about kicking ass. And Call of Duty Elite is about kicking even more ass. Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life of kicking more ass. think you're Captain Killstreak now? Elite will take your game on a magical mystery ride of badassitude. You don't get better by studying kill cams between respawns. You get better by studying heat maps, weapon demos. That's Elite. Getting all the new maps first on your console, that's Elite. Knowing the right time to break out Natasha here, that's mucho grande Elite. You want to go to work with Daddy, baby? Huh? Yeah, you do. Yeah. But Elite's not just about you, Buttercup. It's about your clan, because with Elite, clans matter. If someone in your clan is kicking ass, yeah, make it rain. Then you're all kicking ass. This is my clan, the Bitch Slaps. Don't get slapped. Every month, Elite drops something new to keep things fresher than a noob's diapers, because noobs poo in their pants. Spec Ops, new game modes, and yes, new maps. Every frag flipping month for the next 9 months. Oh, that makes me want to celebrate. Hey, little help? Just kidding, it's a grenade. Of course, you can wait and get the DLC packs when they drop later. Pay the $15 4 times a year, like my grandmother buying a couch on layaway. Or you can join Elite for $50 and get it all! Sound off, players! How do you get this party started? How do you kick more ass? How do you get more How do you get more swagger in your wagger? How do you piss off the terrorists? How do you break up with your fiancé? How do you disappoint your mom? How do you confuse your dad? What rhymes with dead meat? Woo! That's what I'm talking about! Let's do this! Nut up, join up, Elite.
How do you feel? Isn't it I mean, I just think about how many kids are spending hours with this, and their parents have no idea. They really don't. I mean, they really don't. But it's so, I mean, can you imagine what it's like for in the mind of a 14 or 15-year-old boy who's spending a couple hours with this every night to then walk around the rest of their life? That stuff is in there. That way of thinking gets in there, and it is profound, and that's what we are facing when we work with kids. It may not be your kids, but kids in their lives are interacting with this stuff, and we need to be aware of that. The new DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for both psychiatrists and psychologists, is going to be coming out in the next year, and there are proposed new categories for video gaming addiction, internet addiction, and social networking addiction, and I think it's really important to know that. So if people are having a difficult time giving up a technology for 24 hours, if they experience anxiety or depression as a result of that, if they shy away from social situations that they would have normally engaged in order to engage with the technology, need to be aware of that. If they need increasing levels of intensity of the technology or the software, or they need more of it, that's another warning sign. But you can know that addictive qualities that exist with chemicals, that exist with all kinds of other dynamics, exist with technology, and we are now in that kind of period of time where we're scientifically gathering information about that. Okay, we're going to just fly through 3 of the impacts now that you're all really depressed and feeling kind of low. We're going to do a really quick model of the brain. Have you done a model of the brain since, have you guys been here? Okay, all right. So take your hand, fold your thumb in, and gather your fingers up around. This is the brainstem back here. This is the reptilian brain. This is like the I am walking, or I am afraid, so I go, ah, and I want to flee, or I want to fight. This is just that back brainstem part of the brain. Back here, this region of the brain is responsible for higher order thinking, critical thought, integration, synthesis. Up here are areas that are responsible for vision, movement, some early forms of coordination, and this region of the brain is very important for taking in information and interpreting it and understanding where stimulation and wiring needs to happen as a result of the intake of information. In here, in the deepest part of the brain, right kind of in the middle between your ears, is the emotional centers of the brain, the hippocampus. That's where you're going to process emotions and kind of confusing stimuli that come in. If you feel that model, there is only one small region that touches every other region, and it's not perfect, but it's this little area between this last knuckle and the fingertip. Do you feel how that touches the emotional center? It touches areas of the back of the brain, it touches here, and then in the very inside it even touches the back. This is called the prefrontal cortex, and this is the part of the brain that our newest forms of fMRI scans can finally see. I mean, we are finally now in a time where our technology, technology is not all bad. I use technology. I could not do what I do without it. So it's fantastic. It's just, well, we'll get to that. Anyway, we now know that this is the region of the brain that is responsible. It's kind of like neuroscientists call it the CEO of the brain. It's responsible for emotional regulation, for relational attunement. It's responsible for helping me integrate my body and my mind and my soul, so for bodily integration. It's also responsible for, or it fires in situations, and you see firing happen in situations that are responsible for empathy. And in the brain of an individual who shows high levels of resilience, which resilience and empathy are two of the highest declining traits in children under the age of 18 right now. And resilience is psychologically defined as the ability to handle life stressors without experiencing psychological distress. So in individuals who show high levels of resilience, there is a lot of firing in this prefrontal cortex. Now the tricky thing is, the prefrontal cortex only fires with sustained and prolonged attention. And one of the things that technology is most impacting is the way in which information is presented to us. We are not asked very often anymore to sustain attention. Does that make sense? I want to show this to you by showing, if we should be able to find a good example of anything educational, it should be educational television, right? And I am a huge believer in Sesame Street. I think, and if any of you here have Netflix, go home, go to your room tonight, whatever, watch The World According to Sesame Street and Being Elmo. I tell you, they will change your lives. But I'm going to show you the introduction to Sesame Street in 1965. I would like you to count the visual sound bites, count the number of seconds in each sound bite, which is a sustained shot. Hopefully, we're going to do that right now. Look at Sesame Street. We wonder why children can't go from being, at home in front of screens all the time, as most kids are, remember, 11 hours a day in front of screens, to a classroom where there's one teacher and no moving images. Their brains are wired to expect constant audio, constant visual, constant movement. It's really interesting when I talk with teachers just how much they are experiencing a difficulty holding the attention of children. Is this true for some of you? I mean, have you found this to be true? Another trend that is it's starting to show up in the literature now is an increase in masturbatory behavior in the classroom, which if you think about it makes perfect sense, because if you're bored out of your gourd, that's one way you can be less bored. And it's under a desk. But the brain is we are training children's brains to tell them that if there isn't interesting information, then they should tune out. Because at the same time, we have stopped offering them opportunities to be bored. So they have no idea how to kind of sustain their own forms of stimulation, which we're going to get to. A couple of things I want you guys to know, and we're going to fly through these, but just that there's a lot of research that shows that video games use the same exact principles as do people at Sesame Workshop to develop Sesame Street, or as do great curriculum developers. They want increased practice. They want you to overlearn, so they want you to do something till it's automatic. They give higher levels of reward for higher levels of accomplishment. They are using the same principles to teach. So if we think that Sesame Street can teach kids to read, then we have to believe that violent video games can teach children to be violent. And some of the most compelling research I want to give you two studies, and then that's all we're going to talk about the brain today. But one, there was an individual in Asia who wanted to be able to afford his own real-time brain scan machines, which are very expensive. So he found the deepest pockets, and he said, I'm going to go to the video game industry, and I'm going to prove, he told them, I will prove to the public that your games build brain function. No-brainer. I will make it happen. So he developed this no-fail research. He put a huge sample in the same room. Half of the group was playing a very provocative video game. The other half of the group spent 30 minutes doing the Kraepelin test. Anybody know the Kraepelin test? It is adding single digits with a paper and pencil for 30 minutes. Adding single digits. Now he's just like, of course this is going to totally score. Well, it didn't. The group doing the video games had firing only in the visual and hand-eye coordination centers and in the brainstem, whereas the group in the Kraepelin test had firing all throughout their entire brain. They were having to deal with envy because they weren't playing the video game. They were having to deal with boredom. They were having to exert self-control. They were having to use their eyes and hands in a different way. He didn't get his money. It's very sad. So that's just one example. Another example, or another piece of research that I think is profoundly important. If you take across technology platforms and different forms of screens, and you look at the brains, the real-time scans of individuals who have seen a high number of violent images, when you show those individuals images of sick children or dead animals, the emotional centers in the prefrontal cortex light up, as you would expect in any of our brains when they see those images. However, when you show them images of stabbings, shootings, hangings, or torture, there is either decreased or no firing in the prefrontal cortex, which shows that we have rewired the brain to avoid responses based on our inoculation and flooding of images. So we try to make something less evocative that I believe should be evocative. And I think that's important. One of the big issues is that we now have these gateway games. I call them gateway games. Angry Birds, is the most downloaded game. Anybody read all this stuff that came out about 2 months ago in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times? It was also in GQ. A bunch of psychologists came together because they were completely addicted to Angry Birds, and they kept deleting the app and then failing and reloading the app. And basically, they did research and found that playing Angry Birds, anybody in here play it ever? You pull the slingshot back, and it's super easy, so you can master it really well. The graphics make it very real looking. So physics teachers are using it to teach physics because it's so real, the arc. But basically, when you pull that slingshot back, if you are a person who has found Angry Birds to be stimulating, a dose of dopamine, which is the same neurotransmitter that's released with drug addiction, and basically it's an anticipatory neurotransmitter, so it makes you want to see what happens next. But a dose of dopamine, similar to the dose of dopamine that is released with using speed, is released every time you pull back that slingshot, which is so fascinating. They did similar research with Twitter, and they put individuals in a room with Twitter and had them tweet. So it's this constant feedback and constant putting out there what I'm doing and getting input from other people about what they're doing. And they found in the brains of those individuals that their brains had a release of oxytocin, which they call the cuddle hormone. That oxytocin kind of amps up. The supposedly one of the most amped up oxytocin situations is in the groom, the first minute he sees his bride down the aisle. And the Twitter users, in 15 minutes of Twitter use, had increased levels of oxytocin at the same level that those grooms had when they see their bride. There is some new research that has not been well replicated, so I can't tell you if it's accurate or not yet, but that shows a similar release of oxytocin and dopamine when an iPhone user pulls out their iPhone. It is fascinating. And you think about the kinds of, oh, this is just another thing, you know, video games, another issue with the brain with video games is they just mess with a child's sense of reality. There is less and less real and pseudo, and less of a knowledge of what is real and pseudo. This is a game called Juarez Drug Cartel that came out the exact same week that 45 people were killed in Juarez, Mexico by the drug cartel. Now that just sends a really confusing message to children. And when they are not able to, especially children who are not at the age where they can understand the difference between concrete and imaginary. This is another thing I really want to show you, and then we're going to move on. Dead Island. This is a zombie game that came out at Christmas last year, and it has gotten a ton of press because the new trend in video games is to treat them as entertainment objects. So they did a first that I think we're going to see more and more of, and they bought time in movie theaters and showed the preview for their game before movies. And the thing about that is the MPA, Motion Picture Association, has just changed. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but in the last 12 months, they've done away with some of the red band warnings so that you can show previews for a PG movie at a G movie now, and for R movies at PG-13 movies. It's very confusing. There are a lot of parent advocacy groups who are pushing that. But the one thing about video games is they're not held by the same rating system. So they can show very advanced levels. And what is tricky about it, and you'll see in this is a very provocative. They hired filmmakers in Hollywood. They hired a soundtrack or a score writer to write the music. And it really plays on a sense of melancholy and a sense of sentimentality. And you'll see people, even people who are very jaded, say, I felt gross watching it and I couldn't look away. And so I want to show you kind of the kinds of what's happening next step in terms of advertising for video games.
Peggy 18.
it's troubling. So there are beautiful things about technology, and there are beautiful ways that technology are being used, but the frustrating thing is that a lot of the beautiful forms of technology are now getting kind of mixed in with some of the more hurtful forms of technology, and it's a little bit like the frog is in the pot. You know, the frog jumps into a pot of water on a stove that's kind of lukewarm and doesn't realize it's boiling to death as the water warms up. So the more we can help families be aware that this stuff, even that iPhone in the teether, leads us to be more inclined to not pay attention when our kids bring home Dead Island later, and to not be talking with them because they're doing this all outside of the purview of us, and it's impacting their brains and what their brains expect, is really huge. Does that make sense?
What age kid is watching?
Well, I don't know the specific statistic for Dead Island, but the problem is that there aren't the same kind of controls with most video games that there are with, say, movie sales in some settings, so kids can go into a GameStop and buy it. Or go to a friend's house and play it. So I would have to look. But Call of Duty is, again, that 14 to 17-year-old is the second demographic. I would encourage all of you to refer people to Common Sense Media. They have the best reviews of games and movies, and give all, the other great thing about this is if you've got, a lot of times kids really love the war games because of the strategy involved. And if you can get them some games that involve heavy strategy without the violence, then it's fantastic. So get them a FIFA World Cup soccer game, or get them a, you know, there are all kinds of stuff, and Common Sense Media helps you figure that out. So what are the strategy games? What are the entertainment games? It's very, very helpful. It's just important also to know that cheating is on the rise, and I think that's partially because kids have less of a sense of self, and also it's just so easy to cheat now. And then also that we have bought this false notion that multitasking is a good thing. Multitasking is just a fancy word for distractibility, and we are all very distractible. And so the more we can stop overstimulating, stop multitasking, and start valuing doing one thing at a time, the better. All right, relational impact. Sadly, we're not going to have as much time to watch as many things, but this is just that research about the iPhone and the oxytocin and that is released in the dopamine. But basically, if you think about it now, children are trying to, all of us, are forming relationships now in a time of absolute and extreme self-promotion, right? Everything is about exposing the self. It's about revealing the self. It's also about there being kind of these multiple ways that we connect. You know, when kids connect now, they're also connected to a whole world in their pocket. They never have to deal with a frustrating lull in a conversation, because there's always a way out. They always can be getting a call or sending a text, or they don't have to deal with the messy face-to-face. There's a decrease and a decline in dating, it looks like, if you look at cultural anthropology and sociology right now, but that's directly related to the fact that there's an increase in friends with benefits. So kids are just friends, are performing sexual favors for each other, so there's less dating. And if you think about it, if I don't know how to talk to you one-on-one and handle awkward silences, and I never talk because I have all my conversations via text, it's a whole lot easier to kiss than handle, you know, a conversation that has awkward pauses, that doesn't, you know, you don't know where to go with it. There are all kinds of new health studies out about how just hypertexters and hyper-social networkers are dealing with huge impact in their relationships. Again, because relationships are happening this way, side by side with a screen, instead of face-to-face and interacting. Do you guys kind of connect with this? So again, you know, kids, when they get together, they want to watch a movie, or they want to play a video game, or they want to, you know, do other things. So parents have to be able to be strong enough and willing enough to give away their time and give their kids gutty, real-life relationships. When their kids are spending 23.5 hours on Facebook, and now Facebook is talking about giving access to kids even younger, you know, and there's this lack of discernment in what you share. The other tricky thing that happens relationally is people develop a Facebook presence based on what they want to put out there. Does that make sense? So, you know, again, I had to budget my photos on my little Insta camera, but kids will now take 500 photos, find the best 3, doctor them up, put them on, pick the bands that will get the attention, when the bands you like, the TV shows you like, and then they get followers for that. And what ends up happening is psychologically, internally, they've got a friend group that's based on a false self. Does that make sense? So they have an ability to create a false self and promote it much more than we've ever had in any other time in history. There's some new research that shows that the hyper Facebook users have a lower senses of self-esteem and poor body images. I don't know about you guys. I personally don't use Facebook personally much. I have a professional site where I put all the research that comes out and just use that as my dumping spot for research. But Facebook is profound for sitting around, and you can sit around and see all the parties you were not invited to, all the ways that everybody else looks great, looks happy, seems so, perfect, and compare yourself. And it's really profoundly important to think about. Massive multiplayer online games. Thank you. Role-playing games. So these are basically where a kid is playing a game online and they've got headphones in and they're interacting with people all over the world. They have a microphone and headphones. And this is, again, kids are creating whole social networks. Now, if these are games that are strategy-based and respectful, fantastic. In my 6-hour talk, I read all these reviews from gaming companies, even though that say kids should not be in these environments really alone because the language and the way people talk. I mean, remember that Call of Duty thing? That's who's playing a lot of these games. So these kids are, listening to and interacting with these folks. They have them all the way down for, social networks, all the way down for little kids. They're disguised as this. I love it when people come into my office and say, well, my kids don't really watch any TV. They only watch the Disney Channel. The Disney Channel is the most hypersexualized, gender stereotyped, it's bad. Anyway, so they create sites like this that make you think it's okay for your kids to go on, create a little animal, you create a penguin and then you interact with other penguins using drop-down menus. But kids will create websites and ways of interacting with their drop-down menus to ask each other questions like, are you a boy penguin, are you a girl penguin? Will you be my boyfriend, will you be my girlfriend? It's unbelievable, and it really does happen. This is a social network that's huge on the East Coast, so when I'm there is something up here, let me. It's called IMVU, which I think that name is interesting. But you create an avatar and you look like how you want to look. The newest thing in social networks for dating is now you can create an avatar, and your avatar can go on a date with your potential partner's avatar before you go on a real one. Again, we are just, and by the way, we are creating less and less ways of genuinely connecting and more forms of performance art. I really feel like relationship in this age is performance art. We say certain things on Facebook, and we know they're going to be seen. Why don't we just pick up the phone and say them? It's just interesting. Relationship is changing in the way it's happening. Okay. We're not going to watch this, but
and that's the word interactive. Surely
Okay. Basically, if you want to see something very interesting, go search Project Natal. But basically, technology is trying to move more and more right now into a place where we don't need one of these. We don't need a controller. We ourselves are the controller. That's what the Wii is. The newest forms of Wii, you don't even have something in your hand. You just use your body. Facial recognition is a big thing that most companies are trying to work toward in software development so they can read the look on your face to kind of be able to show you different advertisements. It's too complex to go into right now, but I just want to show you how this plays out in children's software. This is one of the best-selling games from last Christmas. And think about this for kids who don't have social skills or for parents who just don't want the tediousness of buying real pet food and cleaning a litter box.
Skittles, where are you? There you are. Skittles? Hi. Okay, get down now. Skittles, be careful. You okay? Good. You're my good Skittles. Yes, you are. You want it on your back? Yeah, you like that. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Good Skittles. Okay, Skittles, get up. Let's do some tricks. Good. Ready? Sit. Good. Now jump. That's okay.
Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with it. However, this gets pretty convenient, and you get used to this. I don't have to buy food. I don't have to clean up. My kid can forget to feed their pet for a week. It doesn't die. However, what are we teaching kids? You know, that it's just easier to have cyber relationships. Again, there's nothing dirty, nothing hard. Yeah?
I just wondered, do you touch on your talks about losing the tactile sense?
Normally we do, yeah, or normally I do, and we're going to talk a little bit about how important it is, because so much, what happens then is also your kid wants to spend more and more time here, which means they're spending less and less time in the real world, which means they're just doing less outside, less with their physical bodies. Yes, so that's something if we had all day to talk about, we would spend a good amount of time on.
Time-wise, I wonder if we can, how much time do you want for question and answer?
Well, do I still have till 1:15 or no?
Well, we want to finish at 1:15, so
Okay.
we want to have some time for Q&A.
Okay, I'll fly, and then, yeah, I'll fly. Okay. Then the other thing that's just big in relational world is cyberbullying. That's something we would spend hours on normally. And so I encourage everybody to look at stopcyberbullying.com, or .org, I'm sorry, and just acquaint yourself with it. It's huge and important. In terms of a sense of self, I'm going to kind of talk quickly about this. These are the traits that if you look at psychological literature are required for having a strong sense of self. Relational attunement, that means being able to be with people and have a sense of self, but also connect with others. So be able to connect and separate well. Emotional awareness, what am I feeling and how can I relate? Body congruence, that has to do a lot with touch and kinesthetics and how do we kind of present and maintain and be aware of our own bodies, our own physical presences in the physical world. And then executive function, that's all those traits in the prefrontal cortex. Basically, all of these things, and this is executive function, these are the functions, and they're on your handout, of the prefrontal cortex. Basically, all of those skills are deeply impacted the more technology is used. Partially because just the more you interact with something, the less time you have to develop what you've already got. That just makes logical sense, right? Kids are looking for the outside. What we used to see as an ability to develop kind of a sense of I can be bored and entertain myself. I can experience stressors and figure out how to soothe myself. Those are no longer possible. We look for all of that on the outside. So where we used to have developed an internal locus of control for an ability to self-soothe and an ability to regulate ourselves, now increasingly kids are looking to the outside world for that, and that puts them at great risk. Does that make sense? So they want the outside to stimulate them, they want the outside to motivate them, they want the outside, all of these things they want to come from the outside rather than the inside, and that's showing a great decrease in resilience and empathy. It's also showing just a decrease in skills. One of the ways that kids build a healthy sense of self is by learning basic skills, and then they feel good about themselves, and then they're able to take other risks and try new things. And that doesn't happen in the same way because kids are developing digital skills. Even this used to force people to stop and breathe. Because it takes a long time to dial a phone. Now, how many phone numbers do you even know? That's actually a marker for early onset dementia. And we have just made it worse. So, if you look at Life magazines from the 50s, this is what you see. Ads like this. Here, use this cigarette to guard against throat scratch. Or this claim that this glass of Tang is better for you than a glass of orange juice. It has more nutrients. Or how about this one, that everything you cook in Wesson oil is more healthful. Or my very favorite, for a better start in life, start cola earlier. Now, if you look at all of these magazines, yeah, how soon is too soon? Basically, if you look at magazines from the 50s, this is all you see. Every other page is an ad for a convenience food. We're finally done with the war. We're going to have these easy things. We can have money now that we can spend on a can of Chef Boyardee, which will transport you to Italy. And we, instead of keeping those convenience foods accompaniments, we made them the main dish. And we really did, as a culture, kind of give us easy stuff. It just became a huge trend. Same with cigarettes. What do we find? Years and years later, we find cancer, we find, and the government says, maybe this will help with our problems. Let's put a warning sign on it. Or, in the 80s, we see, okay, let's come up with a food pyramid. But by the time we did those things, it was too late. We were habituated. And that's my concern with technology. We have become habituated to using it more and more, to becoming early adapters to whatever comes our way. And until we are able to model countercultural lives, until we are able to engage kids in real life muses that make them willing to leave technology, you know, they don't know how to self-soothe. They're habitually addicted to technology. So you ask them to give up that which they're habitually addicted to. They don't know how to handle the feelings that come as a result of that. We have set them up. So I just really strongly, my message is helping people understand that setting healthy norms around technology, that acknowledging that we are habituated, being willing to go through the tough cycle of teaching kids to self-soothe, and then of investing in their lives in ways that give them real life experiences. If you are totally immersed, like if you love violent images, go see Hamlet. Everyone dies. And you're right there, and there are actors, you know, I mean, but again, most kids don't have that opportunity, so it's just easier to sit at home with a video game. You know, getting in touch with your body in healthy ways through something like yoga make you less at risk of developing really unhealthy sexual relationships later because all you've done is text. So just giving real life experiences, teaching children that they matter, that they can handle being bored, being introspective, and then modeling that well for them. Watch how many times you yourself are texting in front of kids, or checking your email, or talking on your phone. And being willing to model well and model a rich, diverse, crazy, interesting life. Having interesting people in their lives is also important. I now have been doing this long enough that families who have brought their kids have started writing letters, and the kids have said, you know, thank you, it made me think ahead about college, and I didn't get involved in the, you know, gaming. But let me just give you this, I'll leave you with this will just take about 2 minutes. But let me give you an example of how you could bring this up with a teenager. So here is the tricky world that they live in. This is a Dove Campaign for Real Beauty ad that went viral.
Younger, smaller, lighter, fuller, tighter, thinner, softer. It really works.
Okay, so the message at the end of this says, talk to your daughter before the beauty industry does, right? So here we've got this great thing, and you can sign up for the Campaign for Real Beauty. They send you texts and tweets every day about how awesome you are as a girl and girl power and way to go. The tricky part is Dove is owned by the same company that owns Axe, which puts out this ad. Oh, wait. Oops, sorry. And Axe is considered, many of their ads have been actually removed by different publishing companies because their ads are so semi-pornographic. They also advertise on Grand Theft Auto. They pay for billboards on the game Grand Theft Auto. And so this is the world that our kids are growing up in. This, you know, where can we get power and where can we make money and how can we use technology to disseminate our brand? So just there is an object lesson for teenagers, you know, and say, what do you do? How do you make choices? And there are a bazillion of them, but that's just one other example. So I will write down my website and Facebook, and feel free to get in touch with me, ask more questions as time goes on, and thank you so much for your attention.